everybody. This is Iftikhar Pathan. I'm the co-founder of Miraclis, and Miraclis is doing this online summit. And we have a special guest today. She is the vice chair of Kinetic Engineering. She's also the founder and CEO of Kinetic Green, which is the front runner as far as EV vehicles are concerned in India. She has an MBA from Carnegie Mellon, and she's also the best looking businesswoman in the country in the business. And I wish I had two pairs of lungs, a long list of introduction for you. Sulaja, welcome you to the online summit that Miraclis is doing. Hello, and how are you?
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thanks for that kind introduction, Iftikhar. You're always a charming one.
Thanks. So, Sulaja, we have an audience that is dying to know so much from you and the exemplary work that you've been doing. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. You come from a very illustrious family, and what is the upbringing that you've had and what you've been doing. And then we'll get on to the story of Kinetic Green as well.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. As Iftikhar said, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So I am the third generation in my family. And I think it almost runs in the blood because I love what I do. I love being an entrepreneur. I also love being a mom. I have a son who is at Carnegie Mellon now. And I got my MBA in the US. I worked there for a few years and I came back to India in 96. So for the last 24 years, I've been very much here in the automotive industry. I also worked in the investment side of investment analytics firm, not automobile firm in the US. So it was quite different. But I've been back in India since 96 and I have been part of the automotive industry here for the last 20 odd years and have really done everything, looked at two-wheeler business, automotive systems business, commercial vehicles. And now as a vice chairperson of the group, I look after many group companies. And most importantly, I've started this new venture 5 years ago, Kinetic Green, of which we will talk a lot more this evening. It's our EV venture, of which I'm very passionate about. What else can I tell you? I very much believe in hard work. I believe in making a positive impact. I believe in being part of the solution and not being part of the problem. So you'll not find me talking about all the problems that India has and nothing can be done. I always believe in doing the best that's possible and taking things ahead and making a positive impact in whatever that is at hand. I also believe that nothing works unless you do. So working hard, I think, is as crucial as being passionate and as being committed. Um, Also, generally a very active person, very driven, and I love other than work. I love fitness and sports, adventure sports, skiing, scuba diving, skydiving. So that's a little bit about me. Many times I feel like I'm from another planet when I'm with people, but that's other than that, that's just a little bit about me.
And we love that, someone from a different planet, and we can see the fitness. And most of us, your friends, are inspired by what you do and the way your lifestyle is. So, Sulaja, very quickly, we'd just like to know when other people were just sort of talking about EV, you had already taken a lot of steps in it, and today you've already set up a factory that is doing production, and you're already into the marketing. So how did the whole journey begin? And also touch upon what were the obstacles, because I'm sure when you started there was no policy in place, and it's not easy to put it. And then how did you overcome that, and where are you today? How did it begin? Where are you today, and where are you going?
Okay. Well, I think this was back in 2013, and I was itching to do something new. Having looked at, as I said before, many other businesses, and my grandfather had always taught me that if your idea is aligned to the way the society is moving, to the needs of the society, to the ethos of the society, then you are have a higher guarantee of success. So if you're looking at something new to do, you should always think about what are the needs of the people around you, what is the thinking of you know the world, especially the younger generation, what's important to them. And that's when I really thought about this technology. And I think Kinetic Green is a product of passion. because as you rightly said, when we started, there was no ready market. There was not even a source of technology for EVs in India. And EVs, were very expensive because battery was very expensive. So there was not a very strong commercial case back then. But I was very convinced from day one that what's good for the environment is going to be what's good for the consumers, and that's going to be the right business. And across all the sectors, whether it's energy or any other industry, real estate, sustainability, environment, pollution, climate change, are factors which are very important to the younger generation, much more so than to the older generation. And I felt that this is the time of this technology, it's going to come. And I would like to do something pioneering in this sector. And that's when I started this company, Kinetic Green. I'm the employee number one. We began putting up the team really from scratch, put in place a completely new team as opposed to just taking people from the legacy business. Because in a new sector like this, it's very important that there is a lot of commitment and there is a lot of confidence and there's a lot of passion. So it's almost like a startup culture, right, where everybody's believing in something, and you are bootstrapping because you don't want to end up just lavishly burning a lot of cash without generating sound, prudent business. So we started like a startup with a small team. We went to the government to kind of understand their thought process, and I got a lot of good support from the top in their commitment to green technologies, and that was a lot of very reassuring. Beyond that, a lot of hard work. There was no technology in India for EVs. We went to CSIR, which is the Council for Scientific Industrial Research, which is India's premier science body. I happen to be involved with them because we have these awards in my grandfather's memory called H.K. Frodia Awards in Science and Technology. And during those sessions, we met many scientists who came from CSIR, who were doing really groundbreaking work for India's science. So one of our awardees was the director of CSIR. And I remember that he was passionate about electric vehicles. So I went to him and said, look, I want to do something. There's no technology. Can you guide me? So he said, there's a program we have called NIMITLY, New Millennium Technologies. And I can set you up with 3 of our labs. And together we can create an electric vehicle platform. And that's how we began. So we put together a project to make electric 3-wheelers, though everybody knows us for 2-wheelers, because I thought there is a bigger requirement for shared mobility going electric. And the commercial customer, which is a 3-wheeler customer, understands that, if he has to earn more, then, saving fuel would really help him. Whereas a private customer who owns a car or 2-wheeler is more concerned about features, styling, status, convenience. So we went to 3-wheelers because the commercial customer was more concerned about TCO, and he saw the benefits of electric vehicles, and also for our cities and society. If you reduce the pollution in public transport, you will get a lot more benefit on environment because these vehicles are running hundreds of kilometers every day. So that's how it all began. We did a lot of work on the policy front. I've been involved with the government, with the DHI and NITI Aayog and Surface Transport Ministry, all kinds of ministries to really get the right policy framework. Now, the biggest challenge was we created a product. We had government support, but there was no demand. There was hardly any awareness of electric vehicles. There were no people coming forward to take a risk to buy something which is so new. So how to create a population and create a proof of concept, or create, some kind of a buy-in that this technology actually works. क्योंकि जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. So you have to put vehicles on the road. So we thought about a very innovative way of marketing, which is social marketing. We said, what if we combine the benefits of environment and health, which is what EVs are bringing? We combine them with benefits of livelihood and create good jobs. And go to policymakers and propose that you can use electric vehicles to create good jobs, make social impact both ways, environment as well as livelihood creation. So we took this whole social enterprise concept. I mean, I think all the audience here best understands that how can we make a bigger impact than just environment impact. So we went to the grassroots, and the first place we tapped was the UP government. We made a case to them that there are many cycle rickshaw pullers in UP who are earning very meager amounts, hardly 200 rupees a day, pulling people, then poor health, They have no social status. So why doesn't the government think about giving them electric rickshaws, electric three-wheelers, and that will give them many benefits on health. They'll earn more money. They'll get a better socio-economic status, and it will be a very good poverty alleviation scheme. And the government bought into that, and there was a whole scheme organized around this called the Samajwadi E-Rickshaw Yojana, and we delivered 10,000 vehicles across the state of Uttar Pradesh in 1 year. And that was really a big bang start for Kinetic Green. We set up 300 service stations, charging stations, and we actually saw the lives of these rickshaw pullers getting transformed. From earning 200 rupees a day, he was earning 1,000 rupees a day. He was, wearing better clothes. He was having much better social status. His daughters could get married into better households, and so many other benefits. It's been a very, 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 very satisfying initiative. So built on that, then we went to a place called Dantewada, which is one of the tribal regions in Chhattisgarh. And there was a young commissioner there who wanted to do something on women empowerment. We said, look, our electric three-wheelers are very easy to run. So why don't we give these to the women of Dantewada, and they can become socially empowered, they can become economically empowered. And we delivered hundreds of vehicles in that scheme. But the government came forward and arranged loans for these vehicles. Similar schemes we did, one big scheme we did in AP, where we gave vehicles to SC/ST youth. These vehicles were meant for collecting waste door to door. So these people got jobs, and our electric vehicles were collecting waste without making any sound. And we went to the metro authorities and deployed our vehicles at the metro stations to pick up passengers and move them around. So like this, we created many pockets where a lot of electric vehicles were running. And that sort of helped to really build awareness. Based on that, we got financials to come forward. We got dealers to come forward. We got more and more support from various stakeholders. And today we have so more than 30,000 vehicles. So I think the success of Kinetic Green lies in the fact that we were committed to the cause, that we were doing something good, so everybody came forward to support, and we created a market where none existed. When you look back, seems like it is just common sense, but it wasn't then. We really created these ideas, and now I think there's great momentum, and we are seeing people coming and asking for EVs. But this was a way, so a positive social impact is what really got a foot in the door.
So fantastic. It's amazing to hear the journey that you've had. And like I said, it's easier said than done. And I'm sure it's not been easy, but you've been like a beetle toiling in the dust. But finally, it has all come to fruition, and we can all see what has happened. So I don't know if it was by design or you quickly tweaked your strategy during the pandemic time, because we are all talking about paucity of jobs. There are no funds. There are going to be a lot of unemployment that is going to be generated, and the Prime Minister Modi is talking about Atmanirbharta, and he's talking about creating jobs and make in India. So all this, it seems he's talking for Kinetic. So how is this done? I mean, was it by design, like I said, or did you change your strategy during the pandemic?
Well, I think it's not as rosy as you're making it sound. I mean, to tell you the truth, the entire auto industry is very badly hit with COVID. And we certainly expect that there will be a downturn in demand. Also, I fear that whatever momentum we had gathered on the retail side, for the customers to come and buy EVs, that might get reversed because people might turn risk averse. They might say, okay, let me buy something which is familiar rather than, taking risk with a new technology with my money, because, what if it doesn't work? What if I, don't get the expected benefits? And there is also this whole issue of shared mobility taking some kind of a beating, and people wanting, or people needing rather than wanting to keep social distance, or avoiding rickshaws, or avoiding shared transport. And this actually definitely has would have put a dent in our business plan, where we had been really gaining momentum on putting electric rickshaws and electric autos on the roads through our dealerships. So this was a situation, and what we decided to do was rethink, really, when times like this, which are disruptive, I think it's also important that you really go back to the drawing board and think what kind of a pivot you can have on your plans. What else can you do to ensure that you're able to survive, revive and thrive in the coming in wake of this, changed market scenario, really. So two, three things were for going well for us. One is that we are asset light. So luckily, because we set this company as as a startup, we were bootstrapping. We ran a tight ship, and therefore we didn't have to worry about a lot of debt or a lot of fixed costs, which was good. But at the same time, we went to our people. We said, look, we need to cut costs. We need to have a tighter control on every money that is spent. So our team has come forward and taken 25% pay cut for 6 months on with their own initiative, saying, look, we want the company to do well, and we want to see the bright future. And I think that's really because we are also excited about this business and so passionate about it. Also on our product side, we're doing a lot of cost cutting on the material cost, etc. But most importantly, we changed our product strategy. We tweaked it. So we said that, look, if passengers are not going to come forward to buy electric rickshaws and there's no loans available for from the banks for a while, who else might buy electric rickshaws? And we identified three segments. One was the e-commerce companies. Okay. So we have developed this range of electric three-wheelers, which are loaders, like green logistics, delivery vans, but they are fully electric. So there's no emission, there is no sound. And the running cost of our vehicle is 50 paisa vis-a-vis 3 rupees for a diesel delivery van. So the e-commerce companies whose business is now booming will also get a better saving on the delivery. And they're also anyway all moving towards sustainability. So we have gone aggressive on our loader segment. The second thing which we have developed is an interesting range of health sanitation vehicles. So we have developed electric three-wheelers which are e-sprayers and e-foggers. So on our vehicles, we have mounted the spraying and the fogging equipment. So these vehicles can go door to door, society to society, or in a factory or IT park, or office space, and they can sanitize the entire, the entire premises. On this also, we're getting good response from the municipal corporations, from these facility management companies, and others, where people would like to see that there is a germ-free environment. So this is two vehicles we do. And the third one, which we are going to launch now, it's called Sabzi on Wheels. So as we know, government has introduced this APMC law modification, so people can directly vend their vegetables. So we would like to again create livelihoods at the bottom of the pyramid and develop this vehicle where the farmers can bring their produce on our electric three-wheelers, which again, I wish I could show you the slides, because I've got a picture of that vehicle. You can display the vehicle in those racks, and they can bring it to the city, and actually it can be a mobile delivery and sales van. So again, we are building on electric vehicles and on livelihood creation, but creating new livelihoods, vehicles for delivery, vehicles for vegetable vending, vehicles for sanitation. And I think in the next few months, we are going to push on these new opportunities till the market for shared mobility picks up. Another thing we have done is we have launched an electric cycle, which also I'm very bullish about, because again, people would like to be health conscious. They would like to use personal transport. And on this e-cycle and the vegetable vending vehicle, we are going to go again aggressive back to the policy makers, see if we can give these vehicles as part of welfare schemes. Poor people having electric cycles, women being empowered with electric cycles, farmers being empowered with electric three-wheelers. So we'll again go back now to the various authorities once things normalize, and try to build these welfare social marketing programs. And I'm sure with these initiatives, we should be able to bring demand back. So again, we pivoted on our product strategy, building on our core strength, cutting costs, and thinking as to what might work and what needs to be pushed back. That's sort of how we are facing the COVID crisis.
Fantastic. So as a learning from what you said just now, it's something that can be taken up by NGOs as well, because they have to treat themselves as a corporate, and they have to learn from the experiences that Kinetic has had. And I think, Suloja, we have one or two questions, so I'll just read them out to you. We have Shruti asking, is there a plan for doing something in the agriculture space?
Okay, so I kind of answered saying that we have this Sabzi on Wheels.
Yeah.
And we can create various products where we can work with the farmers for vending their produce. We've also developed an e-tractor concept, in fact, but we have to wait and watch, how that goes. But I think in the agri sector, vegetable vending is probably and produce to be brought from villages to cities at a very affordable cost. They don't have gas stations in villages, but they all have electricity now. So I think that's another area which we can work on.
Okay, there's another one is Mayur Parekh. He's a business development consultant. He's saying, how do you compare capex and opex for electrical 3 or 4 wheeler vis-a-vis conventional one with the same loading capacity?
Okay, so
essentially the payback period for a EV.
Sure. It's a very interesting question. See, now let's talk about three-wheelers and four-wheelers separately. On three-wheelers, the capex costs are have been coming down drastically because on a three-wheeler you can actually have a limited amount of battery on board. You can say, okay, 100-kilometer range and top speed of 45, 50, people are comfortable. So with that kind of a combination of 100-kilometer range and 50 top speed, a cost of an electric three-wheeler with battery will be about 1.5 times of a passenger vehicle. But interestingly, the payback, if you look at a TCO over a period of 4 years, the person owning the electric three-wheelers will save 50% money because he has absolutely no fuel cost over the next 4 years or 5 years, whatever period, compared to a person running a petrol cost. So on a running cost plus initial cost, EV will be 50% cheaper. But very interestingly, now there's a concept coming up which is battery swapping, which we have brought in along with Ola and with BPCL. So you sell the electric three-wheeler also without battery, in which case your electric three-wheeler itself is cheaper than your petrol three-wheeler, and battery as a fuel is also cheaper than petrol as a fuel. So you will see in the coming months that now electric three-wheelers will be cheaper on capex and opex both, not just on opex or not just as a capex opex combination with this battery swapping as a concept. And I'd love to talk to you more about this. I don't want to take too much time on this session, but this is a very interesting area which, if you're interested, we can spend a lot more time talking.
Fantastic. So you've had a very different kind of experience. You have a legacy, and then you were into two-wheelers, and adding one of the third wheel has been quite a challenge, and you've done it successfully. So what is the learnings that you would give to the social sector? Because today, from the time they started Suloja, into 2013, all the Indian companies were mandated to do CSR. And the per year spend has been roughly about 12,500 crore. It was little less in 2019, and now the COVID has hit. And I was talking to you about a day or two back, and you mentioned a very important point that a lot of money, because of the normal CSR money, is now diverted towards this pandemic. So, and I know for sure that about 23% of the employees of NGOs have been told to go home. So in such situations, you as a businesswoman, what do you think would be the remedy for such issues?
Okay, so first of all, I think that Kinetic Green is almost like a social enterprise because we are working towards positive impact, social impact. Though we come from that automotive manufacturer mindset, so we think of ourselves as a manufacturer, but actually we are giving solutions to improve the society. And like a social enterprise or NGO, we also struggle to create acceptance of our concept. We struggle to create financial viability because it's a new concept. We're trying to do something different to improve the society. So I very much understand where the audience is coming from, and I in fact feel, when I think about the situation, that funding crisis actually has hit the NGOs or social enterprises when they needed it the most. I think it's just in the last 2-3 years with the CSR regulation, there was more momentum coming up. Social enterprises, NGOs were getting good support. There was a positive wave towards community activities. And in fact, even after COVID, there would be great need for a lot of work which would have to go towards addressing many issues that would now come up in the society. So in fact, I think the need for social enterprises and NGOs is probably at the peak. So unfortunately, we've hit a blip, but I think that all is not lost. I think that since the long-term requirement for all these areas, like livelihoods, education, health, human rights, is going to become even more pronounced. I think we all can be bullish about the future. In the short run, however, I think like we did for our
Yeah.
business, all the NGOs need to adapt. I think it would be quite important to think about whether the programs can be pivoted. Can you focus on your core, but add on some new areas which are probably more relevant to the urgent requirements, whether it is health, emergency care, whether it is these issues which are currently required to be addressed till things normalize. I think it is also important whether we can collaborate with each other. Perhaps certain NGOs which are already
Exactly.
working in some areas are needed now, and other NGOs can collaborate with them right now and become a bigger force. So cut cost, pivot your programs, collaborate, focus. I think some other interesting areas could be crowdfunding, because I think people have become quite aware about the need for interventions to keep the society, health good, public health, emotional health. And I think if the CSR funding from the corporates is taken a hit, why not look at some innovative ideas like crowdfunding? Go to government, maybe at local levels. For example, I know that all the MLAs and MPs have been given funds to work on their areas. So maybe some innovative schemes can be pitched to these policymakers, and some programs can be put in place. So I think you have to rethink, pivot. Also, delivery can be rethought. That another way to cut costs. You delivery, like if you are into health, look at telemedicine. If you are into education, look at e-classrooms. So we can continue what we are doing, but just modify, adapt, collaborate, run a tight ship for some time till things kind of normalize. That's what I feel. I think the long term need for NGOs and social enterprises is probably at the peak right now. And I really wish all of you continue your efforts and journey while sailing through this difficult time. Like they say in a tennis match, if you can't win, if you can't win the point, stay in the volley. Don't give up. So if you just keep playing, I think that's important, to stay in the race. Like Martin Luther King said, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But keep always moving forward. So that's what I would like to urge all of you to think about.
Yeah, very well said, Suloja, and we appreciate that. And I'm sure the NGOs need to just stay in there because better times are there, and they're absolutely needed at this point of time. So that's extremely good. We'll just quickly, before I take the question, I want to ask you: is there any way that a corporate like yours and the NGOs could sort of work together, especially in the rural areas?
Absolutely. I think, in fact, for example, we need to collaborate. Um, let's say the solutions that we have developed. If I give example of Kinetic Green, our vehicles are very good for creating livelihoods. So at this time, a lot of people have lost their jobs. They don't want to come back to the cities. Maybe there are no jobs in the cities. We can work together through the NGOs to deliver our vehicles as livelihood means of livelihood creation, whether it's for running a passenger vehicle or whether it's for running a delivery vehicle or empowering a farmer, uh, or empowering any other group. We can help together to identify such people, get loans for them from these microfinance institutions or the small banks, and create livelihoods. So this is just one example that Kinetic Green as an enterprise can collaborate with NGOs towards livelihood creation. There are many other corporates whose products are suitable to be delivered for a positive, impact in a rural area, which is needed right now, whether it's water, it's health, it's food, all the areas. And we, in fact, as corporates, don't know how to reach those communities. Whereas NGOs are actually have the pulse of these areas and what they need. So in fact, this would be a best case for collaboration. And that's a way that you can even reach the corporates, because we also need to sell our products. We need to create markets. We're also all struggling. So if you can actually help to create demand for them by, weaving in a program where it is benefiting the person who is using them, I think it's a win-win for all three. So perhaps meeting the needs of society and working with corporates for livelihood creation or health or whatever other product that is being brought in, I think definitely there can be room for collaboration. And that's also again a foot in the door for the NGOs to come back to the corporates and seek some kind of project support.
Absolutely, very well said. So I have a question from Tejista, if I'm pronouncing it right, Tejista Pradhan, industrial product designer. She says, "Hey, how would you manage the electronic waste produced from low cost electric bicycles and such stuff for the low income target?" That makes sense.
I can answer the electronic waste part. I am not sure how the low income target is relevant in the question, but it's a very interesting question again. See, EV basically it's a vehicle like any other vehicle, but you take out all the engine, the engine parts where the internal combustion takes place, right, and which is leading to the fumes and the emission, and you replace it with a motor, controller, and a battery. So the motor replaces, the engine and creates the, helps run the wheel. And the controller is like the brain, which kind of controls the, how the vehicle and the motor behaves and how the fuel from the battery is delivered to the vehicle. So these are permanent parts that will always remain in the vehicle. The only part which is, you can say, consumable is the battery, right? So we use now lithium-ion batteries. People are pretty much moved away from the lead-acid batteries. And lithium-ion batteries have a long life. So today, let's say it's 3 years or 5 years. It is expected to go to as high as 8-10 years in the coming times. But unlike common belief that the batteries are not recyclable, in fact, lithium-ion batteries are very much reusable and recyclable. So at the end of a 5-year period of being used on vehicles, they can then be used for 5 years as part of energy storage. So like on a telecom tower or any other form of stationary energy storage. Because when we run a battery, when it goes to 70% depth of discharge, it's no longer suitable for the vehicle because it's taking too much space and not giving enough energy. So then it can be used for next 3 to 5 years as a stationary application. After which you can remine the lithium. You can retract the lithium and use it for a new battery. So there really isn't any electronic waste. And the battery case can again be reused to put in new material and can again become a battery. So in fact, this entire opportunity is also a big business opportunity for those who are interested in it. The redeployment and the recycling of lithium. So there is no emission, and I think there will be no electronic waste, in fact, because you can use it in this manner. And I think some people also talk about electric vehicles, whether since we use electricity, whether it's green or it's really using the same fuel which is being burned to create thermal power, which I would like to say that in fact even our electricity should become green. So as we move to solar, wind, nuclear forms of energy, and then your vehicles are also green, then the entire well to wheel is green. So you would then really would lead to sustainable transport. Vehicles are green, energy is green, and the batteries are also recyclable and therefore green. So we are moving in this direction, and they all go hand in hand. So my dream is that in the next few years, we'll have completely well-to-wheel green transport, and that will dramatically reduce our footprint on our planet.
Fantastic. We are very impressed by the information you have and the business that you're doing. You know everything about it, and we're all learning. So my other question is that you went to one of the. Sorry. Yeah.
I said the time is short. I can talk for hours on this topic, and I love it. I'm absolutely in love with what I do. So.
Fantastic. We'd also love to listen to you. Maybe we can have another session just to talk about that. So, Suloja, you've had education abroad and then you've practically worked in India. So, what is that, your style of leadership, and what is your learnings from that, which our audience can take home from?
Okay, so I think leadership style is more of, it's more your own personal style. Maybe working in the US definitely helped me because it exposed me to a very professional environment and a very, technology oriented environment. And I was in the US at the time when Silicon Valley was, just booming. I was in the Bay Area, in the 90s, and that's when you had Hotmail, Netscape, and everything. It was just an amazing time. So that really helped me, and also being an employee really helps you to be a better employer, because you know what drives an employee, what are their ambitions, fears, insecurities, and it really helps to have that, in your mind. So it was very useful, and I think my personal style of leadership is probably something between democratic and coaching. So it's definitely not an autocratic, authoritative style, and it's also not something which is completely laissez-faire. I'm quite hands-on. I like to lead from the front. I like to work as hard as my team members. My father, in fact, today is still the first one to come and last one to leave the office. So, we have very big shoes to fill. So I work with people. I believe in, leading from the front, but I think I like to listen to what people have to say. Definitely, it's more of democratic. Tell me what you're thinking. Or if I feel that I have a certain point of view, I'll say, well, can you consider this? What do you think about this? So I'd like to build the consensus and involve people. I believe that people have great talent and capabilities, and if you can build a solid team, you'll get the best, output. And I think I'm quite good at therefore building and retaining my team members. I think in Candy Green, for example, I'm proud that our entire founding team is still, at the top of the, um, is still leading various important functions. So I think I feel the style that I have is probably relevant in when you're building a new enterprise, when you need people to really put, their best foot forward. And when the systems are also being created, you have to rely on your team members.
And being a woman how has it changed anything in business, or how has it been?
Okay, so on this, I have a simple philosophy. I mean, I can't do anything about my gender, so I don't think about my gender. I think when I work as a professional and not as a man or a woman. I've never taken advantage or never seen being a woman as a weakness. So I work, as a professional. And as I said, I work equally hard. I work with equal commitment. And I think when you have something intelligent to say, people listen. And probably that's where, even if you don't want to have an edge, because if you're in a room with 40 men and you have an intelligent thing to say, what you say will be heard and remembered. So that's an unfair advantage that we do have. But other than that, I think it's just about working as a professional and, doing a good job and staying committed. So I've never taken it as a positive or a weakness in any way.
Fantastic, very well said. So what is your advice to the other women out there?
Well, I think that if they are already in this session, so that definitely they they have found their dream. They want to do something. I believe that having a purpose and wanting to make a difference really, really, make you a more thankful and a more fulfilled person. And I think if you really can find your dream and if you can pursue it, you're the luckiest person around. So I really would say that it's not only to the women, even to the men, that making a difference is a very powerful advantage. It's a powerful, unique tool to live your life in a better way. So I think that's what I would like to say, that if you have a dream, then please pursue it and keep marching on. People think that being an entrepreneur or being a boss of your own is something which is easy or which is more fun somehow than being an employee. And I know from experience of all of you that it's not the case. I think when you're an entrepreneur, then the buck stops at you. You're taking all the risk. You definitely are required to be extremely self-driven to be able to keep moving forward in the face of adversity. So, but I still think that it's a blessing if you have the opportunity. If you are a person who dreams, I think it's really an opportunity and it's really a blessing. So, really keep doing what you're doing and keep making the difference, keep making a positive impact, because we are the few lucky who have a chance to do that.
Very well said. So just as before we finish, what are your future plans considering the new normal?
So I think I would like to really see millions of electric vehicles on Indian roads. I think that India has a unique ability. People like to copy the West, and in India also we began the same way. People talked about electric. When you say electric, people think. But we have worked closely with the government to say that look, in India it's not electric cars. 90% people in India are moving on two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and in buses. And if you can electrify that, just forget about the 10% who are going in the cars, right? Because for cars, you need ecosystem, charging infra, highway infrastructure, all of that. But India is not about cars. India is about this middle class, which is in two-wheeler, three-wheelers, and buses. So I think there is a passion now in the, not only, of course, me as Kinetic Green, but many of us have the shared passion that we will put millions of electric two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and buses in India. And when billions of Indians use these vehicles, it will offer them green transport, it will reduce pollution from our cities, and we will be the world's largest electric vehicle country. So in a country like India, which is a developing economy, if you want a technology to make a big difference, it has to be implemented at the bottom of the pyramid, not at the top of the pyramid. And that's when its impact can be felt by the society. So I'd like to be part of this revolution, and we would like to put lakhs of three and two-wheelers in Indian market, and create really that revolution of electrification of India's transport sector. And what has always driven us in Kinetic is to be part of people's homes and their lives. So a Kinetic in every home is remains my dream. It's just that now I've been looking at EVs, as a way to really revolutionize not just Kinetic brand but India's transportation sector. We're so very excited about the future ahead. And I think even for many young entrepreneurs, electric vehicles throw a lot of good opportunities in many different areas. I'll be happy to chat with any of you, tell you how that's possible for green mobility, livelihood creation, transportation, manufacturing, servicing. There are many new jobs that will get created. So I think we'll see a big boom in India's electric vehicle sector in the next 15 years.
Fantastic. So it's normally said that they've known to the mysteries of scriptures, but not that to of a woman's heart. But I'm glad we've been able to extract at least some things from you. Thanks for spending time with us on this miraculous online summit. I can see a lot of hearts and smiles coming. People have liked your session and they can reach out to you and to us. And wish you all the very best for the future. Stay happy and stay blessed. Thank you very much, Suloja Firodia Motwani. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much, and thanks for being a great host. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.